Welcome to another episode of Founder Friday. This is Amy Looper, the founder of Relativity Sales, and I am just so excited to be here today with Mr. Tim Manning, the CEO of GrowthShift. Welcome.
Thanks, Amy. It's great to be here. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, it's been so fun to work with you this year here in Phoenix and see your business grow. And today I really want to take a dive into how we can really focus as founders and tech startups around, positioning and your brand, and really connecting with, that human factor and that connection to drive sales. Because as early, founders and early startups, oftentimes it's just kind of a combination of all of these things working together, right, through the build process. So I'd love to pick your brain a little bit on this topic, because I know you've been doing this for a while. Can you give us a little bit of background on your company?
Yeah, so a little bio on myself. 25 years, 8 startups, led marketing for all of them. One of them successful and the others a little less so. A lot of on-the-job training to get me to 16, where I launched GrowthShift. And GrowthShift is a specialist strategy firm that's focused on early stage, that seed to Series A companies, where launch and positioning strategy is so critical for the long game. That's why I started it 5 years in. I'm just as passionate today as I was 5 years ago in helping tech founders compete and grow. So
yeah, that's great. And it's a highly competitive market, right? So how in the world can, founders try to wrap their hands around exactly if they're the right positioning? How do they nail that quickly?
Well, I think, if I may, it's important to define what it is. There's so much information out there as there is on everything. So a little specificity on what positioning is. It's really where you fit in the market and how customers view you inside of that fit. So the notion of category, what is the category of solutions that you occupy, or do you have a first to category play? Those discussions had to be had. If you want to adopt a category, how are you unique in that category? And a category is like ERP, enterprise resource planning, a simple one like customer relationship management. You think of Salesforce when you think of that. If you think of marketing automation, another category, you think of HubSpot. Even though they're not the biggest and serve the largest, they are the most prominent. So what is the category? Who are you in the category? How are you different? Where do you fit is positioning. And then brand, another term that's bandied about a little recklessly by practitioners. It really is how a customer perceives what you do, your solution or service. I would tell you that brand follows positioning. And positioning is the hard work that I encourage, and you encourage, frankly, Amy, founders to do up front before they start to build their brand. The race to revenue is a lure and a trap. And get your positioning right early, and then product market fit, growth, and sales will occur subsequently.
I love your analogy there, and I like your descriptions about both, because brand is oftentimes thought of as, all the things we need to think about, our brand color, our tagline, and none of those things are really important. They are important, but none of them are really important to the early stage of revenue. They're not going to get you to revenue. You could have the prettiest website, the prettiest brand colors, and it falls flat, right? But your message and how it's being conveyed across either the Zoom meeting or across the table is the important part. So how can we get founders, geared up? Are there a couple of steps that they should go through when validating messaging or putting it all together?
Well, it's an interesting discussion. As a sales leader your whole career, and as a marketing leader my whole career, you often have CEOs that will come to you and say, Tim or Amy, your messaging is wrong because they're not seeing the sales grow. Well, there is some formulaic steps that I would recommend founders take. And those are very straightforward steps that everyone overlooks. And first and foremost is talk to your customer. right? Talk to your customer, ask them what it is they saw in your solution. What problem did you solve for them in their language, not yours?
Mhm.
Tech founders make the mistake of thinking they're selling a technology. AI is sexy, it's sizzle, but it's not your solution. So talk to your customers first. Then look at your competitors, see how they talk about your unique problem that you intend to solve. Learn from that, and then look at those companies that you would aspire to have you buy your IP and see how they talk about it. And then once you have that, then you go back to your product and say, now, how does the product fit within the world that we think we can be successful in? And Jeffrey Moore coined it, brilliantly, and I use it a great deal. I credit Jeff for this, but be the big fish in a small pond. And
Yeah.
that begins by defining the pond. That is the group of customers that's big enough and scalable enough for you to grow a business. And then what makes you unique enough to be the big fish in that small pond? So it really starts with customers, competitor, market, and product, bringing that together as an intersection and then carefully messaging to customers.
Yeah, I have a worksheet actually that I'll include along with this interview, and it's really a nice framework of doing exactly what you just said, right? It's talking to your top customers, talking to people that are like in groups you've never connected with, right? People that don't have a relationship to you that are going to give you, people that know us, right? They're going to give us maybe not as candid feedback, or they're going to, just kind of be polite when giving feedback. But if you can reach out to net new prospects and, gain their market insight, gain their feedback as, if you're selling to transportation, for an example, talk to a CIO of a transportation company or whatever that looks like, and get it from the horse's mouth so that you can start to see the correlations of what emotions they're feeling today, where they want to go to, what business problems they need to solve, and all of that will, wrap into your messaging. I love that. I love that idea of, focusing on that and not skipping over it and making assumptions, with your customer base.
Well, let me offer this as an add-on to that and how important this is. We talked about human connection at the beginning of this call, right?
Yeah.
And often it is overlooked as a softer side of marketing, but it is not the softer side of anything. Mm-hmm. And here's why, right? If we don't speak in the language of the customer and we don't resonate quickly with them as a unique solution to their problem, then we don't have the luxury of connecting with them, and they will discount you as an option to solve their problem. So velocity in messaging always translates to sales growth. But again, back to the customer, what do they think about the problem you're solving and your solution, right?
Right. Is it really that important to them to solve, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's wonderful. As you think about, tying all these things together, do you, how do you kind of, resolve this for some of your clients? Can you explain kind of how, you might work with folks and, the process? How long does it usually take for, companies that maybe like 10 to 50 employees in size?
Well, Amy, it always starts with an initial conversation discovery call, right? So, and then a preliminary review of the website messaging. And, whether we like it or not, the website is the proxy for how you think about your company. And therefore, by association, how a customer will think about your company. So none of us, even practitioners of the trade, don't have the luxury of not being succinct with how we message what we do. So that discovery call is really important, because in that tech CEO discussion, we learn about the challenge they have, who they compete with or perceive to compete with, if they believe they have competitors. And that is a flawed notion. I apologize in advance, but Excel is still one of the fiercest competitors to new innovations, and Excel is status quo. And if you think they're not a competitor, then we need to reevaluate, because if you think, and there's a notion in software, and you might know it being around it a long time, but rip and replace is really this phrase that describes, I'm going to rip out what you know and love and replace it with something you don't, and that you have no idea how to use. So we have to broach that subject very sensitively with customers around what we presume to replace. So again, discovery sessions with executives are very revealing. The messaging devices that are available to you and I and the general public, like websites, like videos. We love video. Amy, you and I love video, and you've been tremendous at it. We need to accelerate how we connect with customers and build trust, so that these customers, these tech CEOs, will engage at a very meaningful level.
Yeah, definitely. And I love the fact that you bring up status quo versus, rip and replace, the fear associated with all those things, right? It's a big project. We got to go to Capitol and get it approved, yada, yada. That's probably another great discussion for another Founder Friday episode. But, overcoming those things initially, you have to get right in your positioning, because otherwise you're never going to get through to your customer. You can make a million cold calls and emails and et cetera. But there's probably not enough steak dinners to overcome that if you're not creating that buzz and that message and, creating, easing the fear right up front.
Right, right. Well, it's interesting. It's sad to use an old cliche, but people rarely got fired, or today fired, for selecting IBM. And why is that? Why is that? Well, it's fear, it's safety, it's mitigation of risk. In the decision psychology around sales, we need to address that, and we need to be transparent about that. Because if we don't, they're going to try and satisfy it on their own. And that's why we have RFPs, request for proposals.
Right.
And customers that are nervous about making a big decision will send RFPs to a dozen or half a dozen companies, and being caught in an RFP process can be very time consuming.
Yeah.
And why do they do that? Because of trust. They need to trust that your solution will deliver something unique that solves their distinct problem. I had a CEO once said, you need to solve the problem they know they have before you earn the right to solve a problem you think they have.
So true. It is so true. And it's so easy to come from a trade or something and say, we know that they have that problem. Like, as an outsider to any of our customers, no matter which seat you sit in as a vendor, you just have insight that customers don't normally have, because they're in it, right? They're in the middle of their business, and sometimes it gets real heavy. And so they've got blinders on. So you've got to find creative ways to open the dialogue, for sure. Yeah.
One of my favorite brand authors, and I credit him for disrupting the conventional thinking around brand, is Marty Neumeier. And I'm happy to reference his books, but Brand Flip is the notion and the book that has us flip the concept of brand on its head, which is back to the customer. The brand is now today built by your customers. It's not built by the clever marketing slogans and PR campaigns and outbound marketing. It is built, in fact, by the tribe that you service authentically and thoughtfully, with a unique solution and messaging geared to that specific customer segment.
I love it. The customer-centric approach is exactly, what we believe in at Relativity Sales. I know you believe in it, and I'm so excited that we can all partner together to serve the startup community, because it just makes selling not the four-letter word that, tech leaders, don't want to be associated with. It just makes it more fun, and building relationships is what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. Customer in the center, as always. Right. It's been like that for 50 years. We're a little bit slow to come back around to that concept.
Exactly. Well, Tim, thank you so much for your insight today. Really appreciate it. Can't wait to have you back on Founder Fridays. And really appreciate all of the work that you're doing, and we'll include your links to, how people can reach out and contact you as well if they have individual questions for you.
Thanks, Amy. An absolute pleasure, and love what you're doing with this Founder Friday. Really nice job. Thanks.